Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So today we are going to start with a new module, that is agriculture. Okay, very important module both from prelims as well as mains perspective. You will get a lot of mains questions and also prelims questions. Okay, so we are going to start with new module, that is agriculture. Okay, so now before we start with agriculture, any topic, whether you are getting any question related to agriculture in mains or essay, you need to start with, your introduction should be the contribution of this particular sector. Okay, so the contribution of agriculture in economy, like in the contribution in GDP, the contribution in unemployment, the contribution towards food security. In all these ways we can talk about contribution of agriculture. So let me start with GDP. Contribution in GDP, if you see 2018-19, it's around 16.5. before that it was 17, so it is around 16.5. okay, now see here, one point that I want to tell you is, if you are preparing for a long time, like in 2014 or 15, that period, you might have seen the contribution was 14%. It was the lowest. Okay, so now when I am saying it is 16.5%, it doesn't mean that the contribution of agriculture as a percentage of GDP is actually increased. See here it is 14, that is in 2014. Now in 2018, when I am saying it is 16.5, it doesn't mean that the contribution of agriculture as a percentage of GDP increased. Contribution of agriculture as a percentage of GDP consistently decreased, and it will always decrease, and it has to happen. And because the share of agriculture has to come down and other sectors have to increase, it is because the other sectors' share is increasing. See here, the increase is because of the change in methodology. Okay, there was a change in methodology. This we have anyway discussed before in our one of previous discussions, so I'm not getting into the methodology. So I just want to tell you here, this 16.5, if you calculate in the old method, it may be around 12.5 only, and this 14, if you calculate with the new method, it may be around 18.5. okay, so from 18.5 this is 16.5, or from 14 it will be around 12.5, like that. So what I want to tell you is, the contribution of agriculture as a percentage of GDP will never increase, rather it is consistently decreased. But that doesn't mean that agricultural production is decreased. Agricultural production keep on increasing every year, and we target around 4% growth every year in agriculture. Okay, so production in terms of volume, in terms of the total production, it will be increasing. But the food grain production, you can see every year record food grain production. Okay, so production increasing, but the contribution as a percentage of GDP decreasing, because the other sectors are contributing much more than agriculture. Let's say agriculture, we are targeting around 4% growth. GDP itself is around 6-7% growth, right? Why? Because of the contribution of other sector. So you can understand this is the case. So why the 16.5? It is because of the change in methodology. Why this was 14? If you calculate it based on the new methodology, it would be around 18.5, 19, like that. So the point is, the contribution is not increased, the contribution consistently decreased, and that have to happen. That is a feature of developing countries. Okay, when you are moving towards development, this is what supposed to happen. So now, what about contribution in agriculture? We have the GDP we have done. Contribution in employment. Contribution in employment, that's around 49% as per NSSO 2011-12, the 68th round of NSSO. So if you remember, in our previous discussion in the chapter of unemployment, we have discussed about the survey 2011-12. We have discussed in detail about unemployment over there. So contribution of agriculture with respect to employment, it is 49%. Okay. Then what about capital formation? Capital formation means investment. Okay, we have also done with capital formation as a separate module. So here my objective is just consolidating all those things that we have already discussed. GDP we have discussed, and employment, unemployment we have discussed, capital formation we have discussed. We talked about balance of payment. There we talked about export, import. So next will be, I'm talking about the contribution in export and import. So all these we have discussed already. Now I'm just consolidating as an introduction. The main topic today is actually subsidies. I'm going to deal with agricultural subsidies. As a prelude to that, I'm just talking about the importance of agriculture. Okay, so that should be your first paragraph. So your capital formation or investment, it's around 7%. It is actually negligible, 7% of GDP. It's not that significant like when we talk about contribution towards GDP or employment, it is not that significant. See here, one point that I want to tell you is contribution in GDP is 16.5, but employment is 49. So if it is 16.5, in employment also it has to be 16.5, right? Because 16.5% of the labor force is contributing 16.5. That has to happen. But here the problem is maximum people are employed in agriculture sector. That means agriculture sector is actually absorbed beyond its capacity. So the most important problem with agriculture sector, here you can see this, the marginal productivity of this extra, that is around 23, this 33% people is zero. So this is what you call as disguised unemployment. The marginal productivity of these extra people is zero. 16.5% of the labor force actually can produce 16.5% of the output. So rest of the labor force, the marginal productivity is zero. Okay, so that is why disguised unemployment. The typical problem with Indian agriculture setup is disguised unemployment or underemployment. That also is correct. Okay, see what about total as a percentage of total GDP? It is 34%. So total capital formation is 34%, out of which agriculture contributes 7%. That is not significant. Then what about exports? Contribution 10% of total exports. Okay. What about imports? Imports 5% of total imports, mainly pulses and edible oils. Okay, pulses and edible oils mainly. Then the most important contribution of agriculture is actually, this is very, very crucial for achieving food security. So when we talk about poverty, food security, in all these contexts, very, very important. So in your introduction, this point has to be there. Then secondly, there are many industries which are completely depending on agriculture, right? So agro-based industry. So this is actually raw material for agriculture, provide raw material for industry. Okay, so raw material for industry. So there is a backward and forward linkage with industry. Okay, then crucial for achieving the social objective like PDS, Food Security Act, and all these ways, very crucial for achieving the social objective. So a vibrant agriculture is required for achieving the social objective. A vibrant agriculture is required for ensuring food security, for industrial growth, because many industries are based on agricultural raw material like cotton industry, sugarcane industry, and all these agriculture is very important. Exports, imports, okay, and employment. So I hope you will be in a position to write a very good introduction, whether it is your essay or your GS question. So today, now in this session, primarily we are going to talk about agricultural subsidies. Agricultural subsidies. So this is actually a topic in your syllabus. Once we are done with this, I'll be talking about what are the different types of subsidies, what you mean by subsidies, what are the types of subsidies, what are the different agricultural subsidies, the impact of all these. Then also I will also talk about what is the need for giving the subsidies and what are the problems with respect to the subsidies, and we will also see the suggestions. So with this session, there is no need to read anything else if you are done with the session from this particular topic. Okay, so agriculture, in that subsidies we are going to complete today. So what do you mean by subsidy? Subsidies are the government grants to firms, like it is given to firms. Okay, so grants to firms. Now technical definition is it is unrecovered cost in provision of non-public or social goods. So it is unrecovered cost in provision of non-public or non-social goods. What do you mean by public goods? So public goods means, public goods or social goods means these goods satisfy the collective wants of society. Satisfy the collective wants of society. So those goods are what we call as public goods. These goods cannot be provided on commercial basis, not provided on commercial basis, because these goods are, you know, non-excludable and non-rival in consumption. I'll tell you what do you mean by this non-excludable and non-rival. So I need to now explain this term, non-excludable and non-rival, right? See, if you take example of defense, okay, so defense means, do you think you can exclude this? Without that you can't survive. Okay, so everybody will benefit from this, so everybody will benefit. That is why non-excludable. Why non-rival? Because everybody can get the benefit at the same time. It doesn't mean that if one person is using, the other person is deprived. No, everybody is getting the benefit at the same time. Okay, so more than one person can use it simultaneously. So non-rival, everybody will benefit, so non-excludable. So what do you mean by public goods? This can be a prelims question. It satisfies the collective wants of society and cannot be provided on commercial basis, as these are non-excludable and non-rival in consumption. So what are subsidies? Subsidies are the government's grants to firms, just like taxes are imposed on you know, the firms, but you know, who will get the who will be actually paying the tax? It is the consumers are paying the tax. Just like that, the subsidies are given to firms, but ultimately the consumers are going to benefit it. The public will benefit it, but it is given to firms. Just like taxes are also imposed on firms. Taxes are imposed on firms, but they will charge from you. Subsidies are given to firms, but you will be getting the benefit. Okay, so that's about technical definition of subsidy. Now we'll discuss about classification of subsidies. Classification of subsidies. Okay, there are two types of subsidies. Firstly, merit subsidies and then non-merit subsidies. Okay, so let me deal with merit subsidies. Merit subsidies. See, merit subsidies means those subsidies which benefit the society much more than the individuals. Okay, so I'll be writing here, these subsidies benefit the society much more than that it benefit the individuals or groups. Okay, so that means these subsidies having, you know, significant positive externalities. Positive externalities means even though the subsidies are given, it is also having some other benefits. So subsidy might be given for one thing, but there may be a lot of other benefits also. For example, primary education. See here, a child benefit, that means society as a whole also will benefit, right? So primary education is considered as a merit subsidy, but when we talk about higher education, that is not the case. That an individual benefit. That is why we are making compulsorily primary education but not higher education. Okay, so primary education, that benefit the society, it benefit the individual obviously, but significant positive externalities. A child benefit means the society also will get benefit, basic health care, okay, and infrastructure. All these are, you know, merit subsidies. So what about non-merit subsidies? So non-merit subsidies means exactly the opposite. I have told you here, significant positive externalities. So here, limited positive externalities. Limited positive externalities. That means general benefit will be less here. The people or the individual or that particular group will benefit more here. For example, power subsidy. So those people who got the subsidy will only benefit, right? Power subsidy, for example. Then higher education subsidy, as I have told you already. Higher education subsidy, food subsidy, all these are examples for non-merit subsidy. So which one is better? Obviously merit subsidies are better. That name itself will tell you. This also will tell you significant positive externalities. But you know, in India, 60% of the subsidies are going as non-merit subsidy as per NIPFP, National Institution of Public Finance and Policy. Okay, so National Institution of Public Finance and Policy, as per NIPFP, 60% of the subsidies are non-merit subsidies, and that is one of the most important problem with respect to subsidies. limited positive externalities. Okay, now let's quickly look into the types of subsidies. First one, cash subsidy. So it is directly transferred to the beneficiaries into their accounts, like DBT is an example. Okay, then we have in-kind subsidy. In-kind subsidy, like provision of free medical aid, etc. Okay, so for example, free medical aid. Okay, then third one, interest subsidy. Interest subsidy, or sometimes you will see the word interest subvention. Interest subvention. See this priority sector lending and all, where you get the concessional credit, right? See, agricultural sector, if you take loan, the 4% interest which is charged, all these are, you know, interest subsidy. So subsidy on credit. Okay, that is what interest subsidy. For procurement subsidy. Procurement subsidy. For example, you know, MSP, not MSP as such. If you are procuring above the market price, that is a subsidy, right? See, in the market, if in case of bumper production, if the prices are too low, you are giving MSP, so the farmers will sell at MSP, and if MSP is higher than the market price, that difference will be the subsidy. But generally it won't happen, because when government announces MSP, people will sell at this rate only, MSP to government. So in market, the food grains will not be there, so supply won't be there, means automatically prices will increase. So MSP will serve as a floor price, but theoretically, if you are procuring higher than the market price, then this is what procurement subsidy. Otherwise, you know, practically it is not possible. I'll explain that when we discuss about MSP in detail. Okay, so practically it is not possible. Theoretically, this is what the procurement subsidy. Then 5, tax subsidies. So tax subsidies, we have already discussed that tax expenditure, it is also known as tax expenditure. It is not the expenditure which is incurred on collecting tax. It is because of, you know, special tax concession, the tax revenue which is foregone because of special tax concession. So that is what, this is nothing but tax concessions. Okay, then price or product subsidies. Most of the subsidies are, you know, product subsidies. These are provided for specific products. So price or product subsidy, these are provided for specific products. See, in-kind subsidy is also a kind of product subsidy only. See, broadly you can classify these subsidies into either cash subsidy or product subsidy. Okay, so it will fall into that. So we will classify, basically we can have direct subsidies, direct and indirect. So what are the examples for direct? It is simply direct benefit transfer. Okay, so DBT, procurement subsidy, these are direct subsidy. Then what are indirect subsidy? These are the subsidies on inputs. Okay, subsidies on inputs, like fertilizer subsidies, seed subsidy, seed, fertilizer, power, all these are examples for indirect subsidy. Okay, so now, having understood the different types of subsidies, like merit subsidy, non-merit subsidy, cash subsidy, kind subsidy, product subsidy, and all these things, direct and indirect, now we are moving towards the different types of agricultural subsidies, like fertilizer subsidy, seed subsidy, power subsidy, irrigation subsidy, all these things we'll discuss now. Okay, so types of agricultural subsidies, right? So we will be starting with irrigation subsidy. First one, irrigation subsidy. So what are the major sources of irrigation? We have, you know, canal irrigation, we have tube wells, we have drip irrigation, right? So in case of drip irrigation, the subsidy is given for what? It is given for equipment. In case of tube wells, that is one of the main important source of irrigation, most important source of irrigation, and subsidy also. Here we need power. So which subsidy? Power subsidy is given. So let me discuss about second, power subsidy. Power subsidy. Okay, so when power subsidy is given, I hope you understood what you mean by power subsidy. It is mainly given for irrigation. So let's now quickly look into the problems, right? The problems is overuse of groundwater. So when there is an excess use of groundwater because the power is given for free of cost or at a fixed price, whatever it is, that will lead to overuse. So what will happen? Water table will come down. You know what is water table? And as per economic survey, 0.3 meters every year the water table is actually coming down. Okay, so that is one of the most important impact of power subsidy because of over irrigation, because of excessive water pumping. Then second impact that you can write is water logging and high salinity of soil. So water logging and salinity of soil increase, right? So when salinity of the soil increase, what will happen? Fertility will decrease. So this is actually the problem in Punjab and Haryana, especially after the Green Revolution. Green Revolution was completely based on, overuse of water, excessive irrigation. So this is a typical problem in Punjab and Haryana. Then at the same time, that also lead to a situation where there won't be any, incentive for farmers to save power because power is given for free of cost, right? So no incentive for farmer to use power efficient pumps. Okay, then what? Loss to state electricity board, because you cannot modernize, fiscal deficit also increase. All these are the problems from the state electricity board. So I hope you understood about power subsidy. Then next important subsidy is fertilizer subsidy. Fertilizer subsidy. Okay, so here we will talk about the subsidies which are given for fertilizers. See, when we talk about urea, there was a retention price scheme which was initiated in 1977. I'm just writing it as RP, retention price scheme, which was introduced in 1977. So they will ask you in prelims, what do you mean by this retention price? Retention price is actually the cost of production plus profit. Okay, so what is the cost of production of urea plus profit? And government is allowing around 12% profit. You can have 12% profit from the cost of production. So retention price is this. Now what is subsidy here? So subsidy on urea is actually retention price minus the selling price. See, suppose retention price is 100 and selling price is, let's say 30. So government is asking you to sell, it's 30. What is the subsidy given? 70 rupee is actually the subsidy. So if now the cost is 35, so 100 minus 35, that means 65 is the subsidy. So here the most important problem with respect to this subsidy is, you see here, when the cost is increasing, this will increase, subsidy will increase. So the firm will get benefit, right? So the cost is increasing means as a percentage of cost, profit also will increase, then subsidy also will increase, so they gain more. So what will happen? The firms will try to increase the cost. So inefficient firms are actually getting the benefit. Inefficient firms means production cost will be more. So firms won't even try to, modernize, or firms never try to become efficient. So rather they will try to be inefficient so that the cost of production will increase and subsidies also will increase, their profit also will increase, because as I've told you, profit is a percentage of the cost. Okay, so here that is a problem. Now see, this RP is almost, this retention price is almost double the imported price. Importing, if you import, the cost is around 50. So when you're importing, the cost is around 50, and you see this is the cost of urea. Okay, so if you compare with import rather than domestically producing, if you import 50, and how much subsidy you need to give now? If you need to still sell at 35, only 15. So now you can see here, it seems like rather than domestically producing, you can actually import at this 50 rupee, so that you are only having the subsidy burden of 15. But the problem is, the current account deficit will increase. That is actually the problem, and the forex will go, right? So otherwise, if that is not there, this importing is actually the best option, because this is a subsidy. 15 is a subsidy. If you are procuring domestically to promote domestic production, the 65 subsidy you have to managed, right? So what is the objective of this subsidy? It is basically to improve or increase the domestic production. But what is actually happening is the inefficiency keep on increasing, because the more inefficient you are, more profit you get, more retention price you make or you achieve, more profit or more subsidy you get. Okay, so the firms try themselves to be inefficient without improving in technology and etc. Okay, so I hope you understood. The most important problem here is it increased inefficiency. So inefficiency, then it benefited mainly the manufacturers. Okay, so benefited manufacturers. Okay, and then it benefited more big farmers. So big farmers used to get the benefit out of it. So these are the problems. Now you see, when we talk about fertilizer, the main fertilizers N, P, K, so nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, right? So this is what, urea. So this is phosphorus, this is potash, okay? So what is the optimum ratio? Optimum ratio is 4:2:1, okay? But in 1992, the prices of phosphorus and potash is actually decontrolled. That means there is no subsidy which is going to be given for these two, phosphorus and potash. So what will happen? The subsidy is only now given to urea. So that led to excessive use of urea, and that led to wastage of resources. Now the current ratio is around, it is not healthy ratio, 10, 3.5 and 1. So this is the optimum ratio, but now because of excess use of urea, this is what actually happened. Now in 2010, government started nutrient based subsidy scheme. Nutrient based subsidy scheme. Under this, actually subsidies are provided on the basis of nutrient content of fertilizers. Okay, subsidies provided on the basis of nutrient content of the fertilizer. So now what are the problem mainly with the current subsidy? So it is actually misused, right? The problem is misused. It is actually used for industrial purpose. The subsidy on urea which is given, it is diverted to industrial purpose. This is even used to make milk also, the adulterated one, and it is smuggled to Nepal. All these are black marketing. All these are actually issues with respect to this subsidy. What are the solution? Solution is neem coating, right? Neem coating of urea. So this is basically the most important advantage will be this diversion for industrial purpose can be solved. Okay, so it is basically to avoid industrial use, because it is not desirable for industries if it is neem coated. It also enhances efficiency. How it is enhancing efficiency? It acts as a pesticide also. Okay, increases efficiency. It acts as pesticides. This was actually asked as a prelims question, the advantages of neem coating on urea, and you get this following option and you need to pick from that. Okay, 1 only, 2 only, all this you need to get. Act as pesticides. Then it reduces pollution because it dissolves gradually. So reducing pollution, so that also we can get as the advantage. Which among the following is the advantage with respect to use of neem coated urea? It reduces pollution. Why? It dissolves gradually. Dissolves gradually. The absorption rate is so less, so basically you need less urea. Okay, not like before you need to put a lot of urea because the absorption rate is faster. Now you just need to use less urea since the absorption rate is low. Now there was a committee, Shantakumar committee, which suggested replace all these subsidies with direct benefit transfer. This Shantakumar committee recommendation in detail we will discuss after some time. Okay, not in this session, in the coming session within agriculture itself we'll discuss. Then procurement subsidy. Procurement subsidy. I've already told you what you mean by procurement subsidy. See, government announces minimum support price. So when the government is announcing minimum support price, why is it announced? So that the market price won't go below MSP. MSP will serve as a floor price. Okay. In case if market price is going below MSP, or if you keep very high MSP, there is a chance that market price go below MSP during bumper production. Okay. But it is theoretical only, practically it won't go below, because when government is procuring unlimited quantity at MSP, nobody will sell it in the market if the prices are low. So automatically supply in the market will come down and the price in market will go up. It all depends on demand and supply, right? So markets serve only on the basis of demand and supply. There is nothing which is fixed in the market. So if in case government is producing or procuring beyond market price, if MSP is greater than market price, then there is a possibility, then there is a this procurement subsidy will come. Now because of this, because this MSP itself is a subsidy, right? Because of this, what is the problem? Production of other crops will come down, because MSP is given to 24 crops. Okay, so the production of other crops will come down, because you get a surety under these these few crops where you get MSP. So production of other crops will reduce. That is the most important problem with respect to MSP or procurement subsidy. Okay, that lead to what? Distorted cropping pattern. Distorted cropping pattern. So that means that lead to decrease in diversification of crops. You will only focus on few crops where you get MSP. So decrease in diversification of crops. So that lead to decrease in productivity, and excess production will be there of these items. That will lead to wastage because of excess production, as we don't have enough storage facilities, warehousing, etc. Okay, so Shantakumar committee recommendation is there with respect to this procurement also. We'll be discussing that. Okay, for sure we'll be covering that also. The next is seed subsidy. Seed subsidy, so that is direct. I'm not discussing too much about this. Then credit subsidy. Credit subsidy, or the interest subsidy, interest subvention, which we have discussed. See, these are nothing but subsidized loans to farmers. So subsidized loans to farmers. See, who will get benefit here? It is not the smaller or the marginal farmers. It is the big landlords and the big farmers will usually get the benefit, because small farmers, marginal farmers, when they go to banks, a lot of procedures have to be there. So it is very difficult for them to get the loans. So for them, the most dependent source is actually the local money lender, right? So they will approach the money lender, and when the money lender says he will charge like 7% interest, so he will be happy with it, 7% interest. But from the bank, the big farmers, you'll be getting around, if it is under subsidy, you'll be getting under 4%. If not, at least 9% you get. Okay, or it's 6% or even 7%. Let's say banks are also giving it 7%, which in itself is subsidized. Okay, so 7% from banks, and here also money lender is also saying 7%. So poor people will go to this person. But one thing that you need to understand is, when the money lender says 7%, this is monthly 7%. Let's say when you are taking 1,000 rupee, you have to pay 70 rupee per month. But when it comes to bank, if you are taken this 1,000, this 7% is yearly. So 70 per year, this is per month. So this 7%, if you see effectively, it is 7 into 12, that is 84% interest. Okay, so 84% interest. So let's suppose you are, if even if banks are saying that we will give small farmers for 15%. Which one is better? Going to money lender for 7% per month or 15%? 15% is better. So it is not subsidized credit, rather timely and adequate credit is what required for farmers. So rather than abolish this subsidy and to try to do something which will ensure that the marginal farmers will get timely and adequate credit, that is much more better than subsidized credit. Subsidized credit will only benefit the big farmers or the big landlords. Okay, so I hope you understood this. Slightly mathematical, but it is clear, right? Then other subsidies are subsidies on agricultural implements like equipments. Okay, then infrastructure subsidy like cold storage, warehousing, etc. Infrastructure subsidy. Okay, see, power irrigation subsidy is mainly state subsidy. Others are center subsidy. Okay, power irrigation, that is state. Power state, I have told you already, that is a loss to state electricity board, if you remember. Other subsidies are center. Now we also need to discuss from mains perspective what is the need for giving subsidy. So we will be discussing about the need for giving subsidy. See, first and most important one, it is basically to supplement the income of farmers. To supplement income of farmers. See, farmers' income is too low, and average of 20,000 per annum. That is the income of farmers. In 17 states, in close to 17 states, 20,000 per annum is the average income of the farmer. It is too low, so to support farmers, subsidy is required. Then it also enabled farmers to apply better quality inputs like better quality of seeds, etc., so that the production will be enhanced. So then the most important one, to ensure food security. If you don't give subsidy, there won't be production, so it affects the food security. That is a big problem, right? So to ensure food security. Then it also enhances export competitiveness, right? So to enhance export competitiveness of agricultural commodities. Okay, then it also support farmers from cheap imported commodities to protect farmers from cheap subsidized imports. Okay, then reduce price volatility, to reduce price volatility. How? See, one of the example you can see simply MSP. MSP, I have told you already, it serves as a floor price. In detail I'll discuss. Let's suppose this year there is a bumper production. What will happen? Supply is more. Okay, it is supplies more than the demand, so prices will come down drastically. So who will lose? The producers, the farmers will lose here. So farmers will get minimum, they won't get anything, right? So what they will do, next year they produce less, or they won't go for production. Then what will happen in the next year? Supply will be very less. When supply is less, who will suffer? The consumers or the public will suffer. So if supply is more, farmers will suffer. If supply is not there, if they are not producing, the public will suffer. So government have to interfere, so that government should tell the producers, the farmers, that whatever quantity that you produce, we will procure unlimited amount of such products, right? But it is not given for all items, essential items, which is ensuring food security. Those items are coming under MSP, so that farmers will produce, so that too much variations won't be there. And understand, agricultural commodities are inelastic from demand side as well as from supply side. Okay, you cannot avoid food. So from supply side why it is inelastic? Because these are perishable items. Demand side, you need to consume food, there is no other choice. Okay, so from both supply side as well as demand side, it is inelastic. So even a small variation in production can cause huge change in prices, huge fluctuations. So to avoid that, MSP is there, that is a subsidy. Then National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, NIPFP, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. There is a statement that you can quote in your essays. Subsidies, I'll write down here, subsidies in India are unduly larger, non-transparent, largely input based, means indirect subsidy, input based, poorly targeted, poorly targeted, generally regressive, and inducing waste and misallocation of resources. So I've already made it clear resources when we discussed about the fertilizer subsidy itself. Okay, so now we can go for some suggestions. What should be the suggestions? Subsidies should be direct, or it should be given for the output. Okay, so based on the output you can give subsidy. Okay, so subsidies should be provided on final output. I'm not writing completely. So subsidies should be provided as far as possible to the final output. Second, subsidy should be reviewed periodically. Then subsidy should be better targeted, linking them with specific crops, region, size, and farmers, etc. Okay, all these you can say for better targeting. Then use of ICT, information communication technology, so that you can reduce leakages. Then in case if you need to give input based subsidy, input based subsidies, you can replace it with DBT. Okay, so I hope this is clear. We have done with subsidy. If you have any doubt, you can get in touch with me here. This is my Instagram ID. Join the Telegram channel for all the videos. So we'll continue with this session. Okay, with this chapter, agriculture. We'll complete in 5-6 sessions. Okay, thank you. Hello everyone.